today we've got Heath Heil. It's Heil, right?
Yeah.
It's Heath Heil here. He's local. He's originally from Orem here, yeah. He and I have known each other for a couple of years now, at least. We nerfed together quite a bit with the local Utah Nerf Foam Flingers.
Yeah.
Pretty busy guy.
2 kids will do that.
Yeah, 2 kids, stay-at-home dad. He does a lot of illustration, so that's his major background. So we'll just get right into it. I guess everybody would like to probably know is, Heath, how did you first start off in the hobby?
I don't totally remember. I always liked Nerf guns. Had one of those manta ray ones when I was like 5 or something. I don't know.
The shield, right?
Yeah, like the 2-sided one. And we had another one. I've never seen anyone talk about it, but it was like a different animal. And then, did a little bit of airsoft and paintball when I was like 10 or something. And always kind of wanted to like fabricate things, make things, and really lacked all knowledge of how. Then school, high school, college, all of that. Went into illustration, always been into drawing and stuff. And then I think I had graduated college I don't remember when that was, the year, so like 7 years ago, and had too much time because I was burned out because like I did a 40-page comic for my senior project in color, and that was just like a lot. And so kind of between like comic projects and just kind of saw some like Nerf guns. I think it was homemade stuff that I was seeing, so it was like relatively powerful and like fabricated and all of that, and I wanted to do that but lacked the means because I just had a little condo in Orem.
How long ago was this when you saw those?
That must have been like about 7 years ago.
Okay.
Because my daughter is 6 years old now, so there was a time period between when she was born and I finished school. It was a pretty short period of time. And that's when I think I like first got into the hobby. Okay. And so, yeah, went to my first Nerf war in, I think it was November 16. So
I think I remember that one. It was like an indoor gym one.
Yeah, like TJ had like the barriers and stuff. Like that was like really long ago. So
5-6 years or 5 years. So,
I think so.
It was.
So.
Oh, cool. Well, so then I guess you got first went into your first war. When would you say like you first started to really tinker, modify, and design? Was that before or after?
Well, it was before that I was modifying. I was kind of making like real steel replicas and stuff. Okay. Because that's kind of what like I saw wasn't there and that I kind of wanted. And then just kind of kept making those and a little bit of performance, but at the time, performance was like you throw a 5 kilogram spring into a retaliator, and Rival had just come out, so, but people hadn't really adopted that yet, so, and then just kind of kept at it until I think about, it was either 17 or 18 that I started toying, I think it was 2018, I was toying around with a little bit of 3D printing to make my Exu shotgun. And
I remember
that was the first time that I did any 3D printing. And then I got a printer in the middle of that project and then, printed all my parts and then started the original MHP 15. And, from then on it was like, I don't think I've modified a normal one since then.
Yeah,
so
I hear that. So yeah, your X-Shoot shotgun, for example, I remember you had a couple of builds. You called them the Winter.
I think it was Winter's Breath. That was like a Strife that was pretty tricked out for the time, like an Eclipse cage and stuff. I did chrono that at 210 one time, so it was theoretically hitting 200. That was cool.
Yeah, I remember everybody was kind of raving about. Well, they still are about how cool those builds were because you painted them, put a lot of work into them.
Yeah, it was scratch building, so I was like cutting sheets of like, I think that one was ABS, but polycarbonate or ABS, and then plastic welding it into shape, and then epoxy putty and sanding and stuff. It was a lot of work. It was pretty fun, but like compared to like the level of detail and accuracy and mechanical complexity that I can get in a 3D printed blaster, it's just, there's no comparison at all for me.
Okay. Yeah. I definitely seen that too with starting off building your own things, PVC, kind of hodgepodging kit, and going from 3D printing. It's like a whole different world. And I can imagine your illustration background and maybe a little bit of like computer rated illustration has helped a lot in that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I know people like, because I started out mostly, it was like cosmetic modding. So like just making things that look cool and people think look cool. And that translated really well into like my own designs. I didn't have like necessarily like a ton of like training or experience in like firearms design, for example, and stuff. But like, illustration is a broad field. We learned a lot of things. So I think that background played really well into being able to design my own blasters and make them like visually appealing, and like, people respond really well to how they look. So maybe they'll take a hit on how they perform from time to time because of that.
Well, I was thinking that was interesting though, because you didn't have like industrial design background or engineering background or really any like,
Not at all.
You did like hands-on, I guess, when you were growing up, and typical of, being a boy growing up,
My we had it was like a sequel shot pistol airsoft gun, and it broke, and my dad couldn't fix it, so he challenged me and my sister. He was like, I will give you $100 if you can fix this. So like, that's a pretty big incentive. So I got it fixed. Nice. And he had to cough up $100. So yeah. I have a little bit, I like to say I'm a fan of engineering. Like, I think it's really cool. It makes some sense to me, but I have no formal training or anything like that.
Right. I just think that's really, really awesome and impressive, being able to do what you do from an illustration standpoint, but then also kind of merge that with something more practical, you could say. Not the illustrations.
It has its practical purposes, but it's like, it's very much like you look at it and it doesn't like, it's not something you can hold or like use, which is also why I didn't just go into like making props, because like the idea that you put in all this work and it's really cool, but then it doesn't do anything. It's like at most you get a few bells and whistles, but like even just shooting like a foam projectile is like such a bump up in functionality that it like becomes more real.
Right. I think that's what I love about Nerf too itself, is not just, collecting something or building something, but then actually using what you're collecting as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Hands-on. Yeah, and then going back to like the aesthetic aspect is that we have a couple of Pigeons here, and that's definitely still one of the most popular blasters, that Frontline Foam that we print here. So yeah, I just remember that we worked on that together like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think that's cool, being able to kind of merge the world of that production versus the illustration, the aesthetic aspect of it. So part of that, some of the questions here I have is, what major contribution do you think that you could see as like a manufacturer like Frontline Foam or other people out there, and then a fellow hobbyist designer, what do you think you'd want to see accomplished, or what do you think that a manufacturer could help you with accomplishing your goals in that aspect?
Well, I guess maybe like a tiny bit of background. When I made that XU shotgun, it was really cool, like almost worked. It was pretty janky, but like it kind of worked. It was like a repeating shotgun for Nerf, which there were some concurrent ones, like the Spring Thunder was kind of developing at the same time and stuff, but like I made one and it was so intensive, and I made another one equally intensive, equally janky, like just such a difficult build to do. Right. And the idea that like I was the only one that had that was kind of like honestly frustrating and kind of disappointing to me, because it's like, this is really cool, I want to share it. Awesome. Which is why so many of like the files are free for my blasters, even if like they're too complicated for maybe a beginner or even a moderately skilled like builder to do. It's like they're still there. And so getting in contact with people like you and manufacturers and stuff is a huge advantage to me, because I can just keep making cool stuff, and then like you guys can like actually distribute and like get it into people's hands in a way that like I'm just totally unable to. Like when I started the Pigeon, I took 10 orders, like the very first Pigeon, I think, before I'd even released the files. And that was like one of the worst decisions I've ever made in my whole life, to be honest. It was so stressful. And it wasn't like a hardware thing so much. It was like just I kept having printer problems and like issues making these, you know, for my experience level at the time, relatively large blasters that had a lot of moving parts and a lot of little things to get right. And, you know, not being able to control, like, for the environment that my printer was in, I had to have it outside in, like, a little storage area on our, at our condo. And so there was, like, no temperature control. So it's just, like, it's hot, or it's cold, it's whatever. And that was really challenging for me, where, you know, you guys are set up to be able to do these things. You have a much more, like, controlled environment, a lot more experience, especially, like, at those scales. So, like, I really angle towards, like, meeting up with manufacturers to be able to do that, because it's just something I can't.
Right. Now, I correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember maybe a year and a half ago that I think Jet Blasters actually reached out to you. Some sort of potential design position.
Was right after the MHP 15 came out. So, I mean, I was working on the second one, although that started pretty soon after the first one, which was designed in SketchUp. So, like, the second one was kind of me cutting my teeth on Fusion instead, like a real CAD program instead of whatever you call SketchUp. And, because I don't know what you call that. So they were talking to me about it, but what they wanted me to do was, like, CAD work on, you know, like the current, I can't remember the company that's making that current, like, CETA variant, like the...
I should know this. Prime Time.
Yeah, that one. That's the kind of thing that they wanted me to do, and I didn't really feel comfortable doing it. So, you know, because I didn't have any experience in making anything ready for, like, injection molding and that kind of stuff. And I, at least, I mean, maybe it's a little arrogant, but I feel like having a dedicated blaster that didn't exist in the, you know, the wider community, like, you know, say the CETA does and stuff, like, where you can go buy it at a store or whatever. I mean, that was their game plan, I think, was to, you know, get into the big box stores. And so if you had, like, a flywheel blaster like the MHP 15 that was set to take katanas, which is their proprietary mag, I feel like that's like at least to me, that seems like a smart business move to have this, like, thing that encourages people to keep buying your other products and stuff. You have a whole ecosystem, and they didn't really seem all that interested in it, and they didn't really want to, like, play ball with that. So, you know.
So they wanted you to work on their designs.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, that would have really gotten in the way of, I mean, possibly everything that I was already doing and stuff, so.
Well, that makes sense. What gives you the greatest satisfaction in life in general? Maybe in the hobby or outside of the hobby? I think that's a cool question.
There's a lot of things there.
Yeah, I bet there is.
So actually, there's probably, like, a threefold answer here, which is, like, my kids, definitely. Like, I find a lot of satisfaction being able to, like, see them grow and taking care of them and stuff. Like, cook every meal for them and, like, just, like, this, like, physical, like, contribution into their life. That's, you know, satisfying. And then, you know, drawing, like, I work on a web comic with my wife. She writes it and I draw it. And one of those, like, peak moments was we bought some printed copies of the first volume. So that was, like, 8 chapters, like 255 pages or so. And just having, like, a physical book of something that you've invested, like, 6 years into is really, like, kind of mind-blowing. And then, you know, the Nerf stuff, like, having a design kind of, like, work. Like, when you have an idea and you're doing all the CAD and then you print it and it, like, is like 80% of the way there is probably like that first prototype that nearly works is my favorite, because the second and the third are when you have to actually make it work.
That's
and not like it's like the experience, like it's like this new thing that's exciting and like has so much potential or whatever, and then you have to actually make it good, and that's not as fun.
So that's really interesting, how you found satisfaction more so in this initial steps of creating something rather than seeing it come to fruition. So almost like the progress that you're making kind of is more important to satisfying that craving for progress rather than actually achieving the end result.
Because like it's like the like rush of like creation or whatever, where it's like because like I would have to count, I would guess like dozens of unfinished started projects in Fusion, where I had an idea, I had a little like initial like burst of energy to kind of like see some progress on it. That's how that one kind of started. Actually, I was working on the 4th, 5th, 6th version. It doesn't matter. There's so many because it turns out it's a really hard design to like modify. And I was like impulsively like, well, what if I made one that was like a replica of something I liked and it was to scale and all that, like meet these check marks. And I modeled up like 80% of it in like a day for all the base shapes and kind of getting the idea of how it would be. And it was really satisfying to like get to that point.
That's awesome. No, that actually brings back to another thought that I had about how much time you think you put into one design, from getting from the starting stage to the 80% and the 30% to your typical 100% or something like that.
Well, as an example, I can
guess.
take the lever action, which I just grab. So in its latest version here is countless hours, because I went through... I started the design before, sometime in 2018, I think is when I started playing around with the design.
Wow.
Possibly before that, like I was toying with modifying like a Sentinel to do basically what this does.
Yeah, I remember you asking around.
And like because the kind of the goal, the draw of what this is was always there. And like I think one of my very first mods was a sling fire, and I cut off the top to be able to top load it. And so, that's why it's in sling fire colors, because that was like my favorite actual Hasbro blaster. And so I've been working on this for, I guess that would mean like about 3 years now, at least, off and on. And I'm trying to remember, it must have been in 2019. We had an event. It was running a Caliburn, and I kept finding myself like wanting to reload because I'd shot off like 5 or 6 shots, and then not choosing to reload because I needed the shots that were in the mag or whatever. I didn't want to go through the time swapping a magazine and changing them out and all that. And I wanted to be able to top it off like this can do. And then I also found that like I generally go through about 10 shots per engagement. And so I would run out of ammo in the middle of an engagement and have to reload, where like, because the engagements kind of come and go in bursts, I can reload between engagements with something like this. So when there's downtime, I can keep it topped up. And then when there's not, I've got 8 to 9 shots that will keep me through most engagements. So it's like I kind of just had this like functional like need to have something that performed in a way that I wanted. And I kind of knew that like this, which I had shelved up to that point because I wasn't ready to go into prototyping stage, I had a version modeled up, and then we moved. I had to set up my printers and stuff and get them really going and tuned and all that. And we had that event, and I was just like, okay, it's time to go on this. I want to see it done. And so like that was that first prototype. So that was like the 3rd version of the file at that point that I'd started over 3 times. And then after that, I printed a prototype and it actually was like nearly there. It was probably at like the 75% point with just printed parts, none of the steel parts and all of that at that point, and no power either. And then just refining everything took dozens and dozens and dozens of hours of just like tweaking, printing, sanding, filing, fitting, testing, and just like the process of like pulling it apart enough to swap out a part, which might be, a couple, like a minute to like swap like the barrel parts. But if I need to change out like say a spring, I have to take off the grip, I have to take off everything, and it has to be completely stripped down. And so it's like adding in that, I would say hundreds, if not like 1,000 or more hours for a blaster like this that's pretty complicated. The Magpie was the same way. The Pigeon, the original one, was not like that. It was pretty fast, probably only a couple hundred hours.
A couple hundred hours for the Mark 7, I guess you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, and then the Mark 8 was probably like 100 hours for like the base, like when I was ready to prototype point, which is really fast, I'd say relatively. But then like, again, the refining and fixing process, and then like wanting to add features like the blowback and stuff slowed that way down. Because if I didn't have like that like draw to the haptic feedback and the realistic like functions and stuff, these things would go so much faster.
It's a lot about how it feels, Like,
yeah.
It's not just how it looks, but also how it feels when you're using it.
Yeah, that's why I like the Magpie so much, is because like, I mean, the double action is also like a functional thing because of the way the hammer actuates the pusher, but it also just like feels really good to use because it's so like clicky and noisy and like just,
It's very hands-on.
Yeah.
Very that feedback, I like that. Some of these questions here, like a lot of people who, I know you used to do like a YouTube series about like you would live stream your Fusion or something like that.
Oh yeah,
like
I did a little bit of that, and then didn't finish any of the things that I started there because that's a recurring problem.
Like you mentioned, I mean, I'm guilty too. My list of to-dos is extremely long. And I guess the reason why I'm bringing that up is, what advice would you give to new designers? You probably get that a lot, and everybody and their dog feels like wants to build something cool. So what do you tell people when they're new to it, like you, maybe don't have any experience with very many things at all, or nerf?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing I'd say is like, so if you want to like design a 3D printed blaster, I'm just gonna set up those parameters, because like if you want to scratch build or modify, that's just a whole different thing. But like I would suggest to a newcomer, build someone else's design first, because you'll just learn a lot. Like if you build a Caliburn, or if you're doing like flywheels, maybe build like a Griffin or something, and then like take a look at the design, try to understand like how they made it how it comes together, like what it does mechanically. And then after that, because you do kind of have to understand the systems that project the dart. Like if you're going to build a Springer, you have to know how the plunger systems work, and how catches and sears work and stuff, and how to go from priming it to chambering it like a dart. And if you want mags, you need a mag well and a mag release, and you of course need a grip and a trigger. Like there's like a list of like minimum things that you need most of the time for a blaster. And so seeing how other people do that is probably the best first step. And then after that, design something really simple in like Fusion, and to get a feel for that. And, I do have a flywheel base sort of thing. It's like a step file that I uploaded to Thingiverse that's got like 3 different cages. It's got like the FTW solenoid. It's got switches. And so you have all the components that you need in a technical, like a literal sense. These are the things that you'll have to buy and put into like a flywheeler.
That you've modeled up already.
Yeah, that are already modeled up and even arranged for half darts. And there's mags in there too. And so like you've got all the parts. So all you have to do is figure out how to hold them in place, basically. And, that's just, practice after that. Also, maybe if you have a lot of ideas, maybe sketch some out, get some ideas of what you want, because it might already exist, or you might just want to take a stab at it. So like, if that's what you want, I think just looking at what's already out there helps a lot. That helps me a lot. Mm-hmm. And, you know, go for it.
Awesome. Yeah, that's good advice. I've worked with, when you're saying about designing and stuff like that, I've worked with a lot of designers, and taking the design from, like you said, the prototype stage to something producible is a big jump and takes a lot of hours. And so I can see where the frustration can come in, having experienced it myself with that, with new people trying to design something.
Always add tolerances too. If you don't do that, it will never work.
That is
learn that the hard way.
I think we learned that on the Pigeon too. At least, I mean, you and I did. I feel like a couple of years ago. One question I wanted to kind of talk about the hobby a little bit in general. I mean, you are a hobbyist. Yeah. So claiming we all are. But what direction do you think you'd want to see the hobby go? Like, I know that it's hard to find time to go to events because you're a family and you're really busy, but you still like to go to events, and you still go to events now after all these years. And so, being with what the hobby is now and what it was before, where do you see that you'd want to see where the hobby go, and maybe where do you see it going now that you'd want to keep going or maybe change? Or
I mean, I think that like designers like me and manufacturers like you and the other designers and manufacturers out there have kind of, and especially like really, really successful blasters like the Caliburn and associated, you know, blasters, I think have really pushed the hobby in just like a totally new and different direction than where it was going kind of before these things really took off. And so, I mean, I've seen a lot of people kind of get upset about seeing it be less like of a modding and like tinkering hobby and more of a like a building and competitive, like I've seen it called kit culture. And like, I mean, I'm kind of guilty of pushing it that way a little bit in my own way, but I also don't see a problem with it. Like, we're getting new amazing designs all the time. I mean, it's like every week there's like something new that is just like cool. And so like for me, I'm actually really happy with where it's been going and stuff. And like, I mean, I want to see like more blasters, more designs. I want to see more events. I want to see more people like participating. And like, if like the barrier to entry used to be like a certain level of skill, it's maybe changed to something else. Maybe it's money, maybe it's just, you know, enthusiasm or something. And it's kind of cool to me to see it like, in some ways, I think it's more inclusive to people to actually have like high performing blasters, because you can relatively cheaply, I mean, now you can get like the Adventure Force stuff, and that's fairly competitive, and that wasn't even an option, you know, 3 years ago. And so seeing these things change like that, and seeing like this, I mean, and every group is different, because some groups are like HVZ groups and stuff, and some are like more like our group, which is more of a PvP, mid to high velocity kind of arrangement. And it's, I like seeing like, I mean, I like seeing the variety, so it'd make me sad if like we lost like all the HVZ events, but I might like to see some like large PvP type events and like some like story based, I mean, for lack of a better way to put it, but more like Milsim type things where you've got, you know, the same thing as HVZ with like objectives and missions and like squads and groups and stuff, but instead of being zombies where, you know, if you put a lot of work into a blaster or whatever it is, it's kind of disappointing. Like if you're that person that's like really tricked out and then you are the first person turned, that would be really hard. That'd be painful, you know, it's an experience. Yeah. So, you know, having the same kind of core setup, but like the game type itself is maybe a little more PvP. I would like to see more stuff like that happening. And, you know, honestly, just, I like seeing people like involved and trying new things and getting invested in stuff. And I think that like the current like environment printed blasters and stuff really accommodates that, while also giving people the opportunity to not be outgunned terribly.
Because it's more available. Like the ability now is it's easier now to not be outgunned. If you put a little bit, like I said, the enthusiasm or maybe the money into it.
And then a lot of the people that like the printed blasters build a lot of them, so they can even
I
like
don't know what you mean.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what that's about. So they can even like outfit other people. Like if a newcomer is there and someone has an extra Caliburn, well, throw the Caliburn at them. They can, you know, I mean, like the event that I hosted last March, I had my dad come and he's got now he's got some blasters, but he didn't at the time. And my cousin came and he had never been to a Nerf anything. And, you know, someone lent him a Caliburn and he had a great time. Like, that's all it took. And that's awesome. Where like, if you're like modding like a long shot and the bolt sled is, I don't know, maybe the bolt sled is creaky, or maybe like you didn't reinforce the stock so it can collapse, and you just throw that off to someone, they're probably going to break something and then you'll have to fix it in countless hours, where like a Caliburn is more easily repairable, it's more easily accessible and stuff too.
Yeah. Being hosting a couple games myself, the UNFF, it's definitely nice to be able to say, here's a bag of Caliburns, have fun.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's a great thing about Nerf too, as a hobby, is we did an event for a Boys and Girls Club actually in Provo last week, I believe, and it was really fun. It was like, here's a bunch of Nerf guns, go have fun, and you're just running around, not to worry about those things.
Yeah, I like how inclusive it is, and I mean, at least the lower velocity. Like, I took my daughter to, when was that? A couple months ago. I think it was the first UNFF event this year. I took my daughter, she was 5 at the time, and now 6, and you know, she had a blast for the 2 rounds we played before the playground drew her away.
Yeah,
but like, because we were playing at like, you know, that 150 range with some iPro, she's able to participate without getting injured, like airsoft. Well, I mean, injured is a strong word, but like she couldn't play airsoft, she couldn't play paintball, and like, you know, and she could just go and have fun, and like, so it's like there's like a family friendly element, kids and adults can enjoy it or whatever, and I like that too. Like, that's really nice to have, where, you know, airsoft and paintball aren't so inclusive that way.
Okay. You mentioned that there is a group, part of the hobby is going towards like more competitive, higher power. Now Caliburn is higher power and it's more accessible. How do you see that bridging with that family-friendly 6-year-old environment?
Honestly,
or should they be separate? Should they be kept separate, or what are your thoughts on that?
I would like to see them able to be bridged, but what we need for that is, I mean, and we're actually seeing that. I mean, like the CETA was actually a little ahead of its time, but like the takedown Caliburns and stuff where you can swap springs with just removing a couple of pins instead of having to like do a full disassembly. Like, before that kind of system became popular within the, you know, makerspace of the community, it was like you built a blaster and it just did what it did, and there was no, and the FDL has this too, you can just turn down the power, you know, all the brushless blasters have that, and that's really cool. So instead of like building something that's like, this is my 400 FPS Caliburn and it can't do anything else, you can say, well, yeah, it is, but then I can swap the spring and now it's 150 and it's, you know, appropriate for a family event. I think that like it would be really cool to see that bridge somehow. I kind of don't see it being possible, just having been a moderator for as long as I have in like events and like trying to help and stuff. It's like the rules, like if you implement like, say, like minimum engagement rules, those are really hard to like,
for sure,
enforce, and it's really hard to get people to like pay attention to those sorts of things. And so, I mean, like there was an event, it must have been in 2019, where like a couple of people were running Caliburns hitting well over 200 and the FPS limit was 145. And we had to, you know, stop them so because they were making kids cry. And so it's like, you can't totally bridge that, but I think that like having events like where it's at the 150 range and then, you know, having those kids kind of be involved in it, they will want to eventually move up to the higher stuff, I think.
I like that.
You know, just have to be like willing to accommodate people's like different like levels and needs and stuff as much as is possible within like running games and stuff.
Yeah, I like that. So the idea of not being limited again by your equipment or your blaster then kind of opens the door for more versatility and who can participate in when and how. And I remember Owen, Blake's little kid, I remember when he first started nerfing with those guys some 5 years ago again. Owen was very much smaller than he is now, and then he's able to then take hits from a higher power blaster. And so I think you're totally right with starting them off young, I guess, and then they'll maybe have a desire to go to the higher level stuff. But not being limited by your equipment then means it's more accessible to do that.
And the better the equipment gets, the more able it is to be switched back and forth as well. Like technology contributes to this as well.
Yeah, technology along with game moderators and hosts.
Yeah, that's always going to be key. Like game running is an art that is hard and will always be hard, and so the quality of an event is always going to rely on that at the end of the day. But like, there's a lot of people that really care, and I think that helps a lot.
I remember back when I first got into nerfs, and 10 years ago, it was just a bunch of, recons and mavericks in the house. Really, only game you could play was close quarters or HVZ.
Yeah, that's what we did. We didn't do HVZ. We did headshots only.
Yeah, I love that. Headshots only zombies.
So you're using like stock blasters, and you're aiming for the face. That's not a good idea, but it was fun. That's what we did.
We didn't wear eye pro, and we had
exactly.
The blanket is a shield, and headshots count only. Can't do that now, but at the same time, it's that feel that.
Yeah.
On the other side of that, I remember going to some events on the East Coast, APOC and Armageddon, where people had their PVC homemades back in the day, and everybody shot 200 FPS minimum, and it was a totally different game. So like you said, balancing with the host and moderation and equipment, meeting the needs of the people. So yeah, I know here in Utah, we're trying to, at least before COVID, we made a push for like 2 different events, higher power and family event.
Yeah, it's kind of hard. Like running 2 events is a huge commitment, and so I mean, running 1 event is a huge commitment. Running 2 is an even bigger commitment. So
yeah, I hope we can get back into doing that, because I remember with the main UNFF group running the things they do, and then we'll have Tim and me or Jeremy kind of running the higher power stuff down here. Hopefully we can.
Yeah, I mean, like a location is a thing. Like that's why I hosted that event and wanted to kind of get like a Utah County group going. I mean, it really was like more than anything else, just like, I don't want to drive 45 minutes each way to Copperton Park. Like, that's so much.
Yeah.
When I have 2 kids that like, it's a major commitment every time. So that's why I only can really do like 1 event a month. So,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, hopefully we can get that started again. Yeah, in 2014 was my first Armageddon, and back then I remember on Nerf Haven, like they had like all these like people ask like, how do I run a game? And people write up all these long documents. They're actually really helpful, but some of it is like, hey, take accountability for your game. And one thing I don't really like is they said the host always has less fun than the people playing. And I think that's a hard mentality. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, I would. Because as soon as you're like the host, you're trying to make sure everyone has fun. You're trying to make sure everything runs smoothly. Like at the event I hosted in March 2020. Afterwards, I asked, what could we do better? And I mean, the unanimous opinion was less downtime between rounds, which is like, well, what am I supposed to do? Like, how do you do that? That's always the problem for everyone.
For me, it's balancing, like, not being, on everybody's heels to get going, but then also giving them enough time to chat, but also getting the games running so there's less downtime. And you do find that sweet spot, but it's really hard.
Yeah.
And so if a child comes in the field, you have to stop playing and be the one to take responsibility and do something about it. And
get them out of there.
Yeah, but I think it's, if everybody's just, trying their best, you could say, if everybody's just kind of doing their part, then it can kind of run smoothly. And so it's hard to do like in a large group setting, but that's a whole other conversation.
That's its own podcast. Not just like its own like episode, its own entire series.
Or multiple. So I think what we didn't get talking about yet is what projects do you have behind the scenes or some exciting things you have in the works I know you brought a couple of toys here.
I brought a couple. So
we talked about the lever action.
So we've got the lever action, which is I think we're looking at an August release. We kind of went through a 2-stage beta. There was the first beta, which was 4 blasters, kind of adapted from my files. These are actually Harrison's files and not mine.
Yeah, I see.
He just kind of redid it and implemented some changes, and then I've implemented changes, and we kind of got where we are now, and we're both feeling like really good about it. We can't figure out a name, and we need to figure out we need to make like a user manual kind of thing, and I think he made an assembly guide, but because mine wasn't terribly good. So
it wasn't terribly bad.
It was fine, but it wasn't great. And then I have the shell Magpie, and the future of this one is unknown. Yes, you may, because
I'm scared to pop it out because it's gonna explode on me.
Yeah, it will.
Popped it. So satisfying, but don't accidentally do that.
Yeah.
Okay. You said the future is unknown?
Yeah, because it's that thing we were talking about. How manufacturable is it? So you kind of have to press on both sides at once, like opposites, to get it to catch. And it can't be all the way over. It's kind of finicky that way. So there you go. You heard it click.
Yeah.
The speed loader helps with that.
Right.
But because I was using different hardware, because it's not optimized for how his manufacturing works and
With
stuff.
Harrison,
Yeah. So
Or
I imagine we'll make some kind of revolver at some point, but I don't know exactly what form it's going to take and if it's going to take this form. Yeah, it's best with 2 shells.
Why is it best 2 shells?
Just because it torques sideways a little bit.
Too far, that's why. Well, it's 1 shell, I think. I think it's great. So
it is so much fun to use.
You're working with the shell blasters on the
Yep.
lever action.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got this guy, Future Unknown.
Mm-hmm.
You did also bring over your newest version, the MHP 15 version 7, I guess, or MHP 7.
At this point, the numbers are totally up in the air because
right.
I started the 3rd one and I got it working prototype. It didn't work right. It wasn't what I wanted. And so then I was working on a 4th one, which I wanted to be dual stage large wheels. And
Full
I couldn't,
size wheels, right?
Yeah, the standard stripe type size wheels. And I couldn't get it to work. Getting the wheels and switches and everything to work right was just a pain in the butt. And so I on a whim was well, what if I make an MP7 replica? And so I did that, and it's mostly to scale. It's dual stage FTW, so the performance is fairly limited. I chronoed on the other one I built a high. It was a pretty good average, close to that, but the high was about 145 for the dual stage as it was.
That's not bad for
No, if you're using it for HVZ with a solenoid and semi-auto solenoid, dual the FTW spins up really fast. So this would be great for HVZ because it's close range, folding or collapsing stock, folding grip, a bazillion sling points.
One concern, have you thought the concern though, HVZ is kind of high and lots of running, kind of close quarters. I would be a little bit nervous about the
stock.
If you accidentally bump into somebody, break something, but
yeah, well, I mean,
you just break
not
it.
such a big deal. Pins falling out.
Oh shoot!
So that's where the battery goes in the front, over the barrel, and then the FTW solenoid in the back. So I'm currently reprinting. I mean, they're going right now actually, reprinting parts for this one to kind of have a second stab at building it a little smarter and a little better, more careful wiring and stuff, and a rebuilt cage that's a little better. So.
You know what? I know Frontline Foam yet does not have a solenoid blaster. We did the MHP for a little bit there, but we never made any headway on that.
Yeah.
So if we do,
this could be a good contender.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm excited. I have to make one for myself at least.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly how I'm gonna release files, but I do intend to at some point because it's you know, I mean,
beautiful,
like,
that's why.
yeah, because it's like one of my my very favorite like real steel. I mean, like I've got what?
You're left-handed, right?
4, yeah. But you know, it's all the same.
Right.
I got 4 of my like 5 or 6 favorites made now, like a lever action, a revolver, pistols.
What are you gonna do when you run out of things built?
I don't know.
You'd have all your unicorn blasters, so.
I don't know. I suspect it will probably involve shells because like I love the shell stuff. It's so fun. Like I don't know.
Here, take a shot. Oh, you got some.
These are different size.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah.
That's a little
so
bit.
far. That's so fun. What's this one?
My phone is.
Alright, can I try this speed alert out? You
Yeah.
just stick it in.
So you just stick it in and you just press it, and then hopefully it makes the.
It didn't quite go down all the way.
Yeah. I've been having problems with this one, so in theory, what it will do is it will press the thing down.
That's probably what it is. I keep reading.
I closed it a little bit, and then you can drop it, and you know, like all that. This one I think is a little bit. You can see I did some filing here. Is a little rough. So
Also, you do put a lot of work and love into each one. I mean, this is yours.
yeah, this one's my personal one. Yeah,
Everyone.
and this one I sanded and clear coated, so it's not painted. It's just all filament except the
The
grip.
wood filament. Can I smell?
Yeah.
You can smell a little
Doesn't
bit. That's
sm-
good. That's. I mean, it smells like.
I'd be surprised if it smelled like wood actually.
It smells
but-
like wood stain, and then smell.
Well, yeah.
That is so cool. Is that like a fake firing pin you have in there, or is that?
Oh no, that helps. That's a little.
No. This thing. Right
Oh.
behind it. That's just a screw sticking out.
Yeah, this is just a screw.
Oh, I mean, it looks like a firing pin. It's cool. It's like.
Because we need that.
Oh, that does not work. Okay, yeah, what are you saying? You need.
You need the that nub in there to help.
Right, for the
center
cylinder,
it,
yeah.
center
I
the
was just
cylinder.
talking to that screw in the back.
Yeah.
It seems to line up pretty well with where the hole of the.
Unfortunately, the shell one takes like a lot more hardware. There's like an extra spring. Like the pusher is actually mounted to the frame instead of part of the hammer. And that's to give it more specific timing because like if the pusher is moving into the chamber, it will catch instead of going into the shell.
Right. Yeah.
And we needed more travel too because there's a lot of dead space on the shells to get to the flywheels.
Dude, try me, man. I wouldn't. I'm not afraid. Extra spring and whatnot. The sourcing the hardware for our current Magpies took a bit too.
Yeah, I bet.
I think-
I didn't actually, with these ones, at this point I've gotten kind of mad scientist with it. I'm just turning my own springs with a drill and like,
Jeez. Whatever works.
yeah, whatever works. And then, you know, just cutting springs down and stuff like with reckless abandon. So I have no idea what the actual specs needed to make them work are because I just kind of feel it out.
So, yeah, I mean, we got it down where you can build a Magpie, I think, 30 to 45 minutes. So, like, if you want any hardware.
I think my fastest is an hour.
I mean, that's if everything goes right,
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, that's this guy's cool. And your helmet.
Yeah,
That's your
last
personal
one. So,
built around actual headset there.
yeah, so we've got actual shooting ear protection on here, and that's because I tested out. I printed a Titanfall helmet, and that was fun. That was 107 hours in TPU, and like 800 grams, so almost a whole roll.
So TPU, the whole thing was flexing then.
Yeah, well, I mean,
That's
it's flexible, kind of. It's it's not like it's soft, And the reason I did that originally was because I figured, PLA on your face, it could theoretically explode maybe or like shatter.
If you fell on it, yeah.
Yeah, or like,
shatter.
I mean, who knows? Someone pulls out their 500 FPS caliber and it's just, I'm going to, shoot you in the head. What actually started all of this was we did an arena game and you were just like on fire that night and you hit me in the face like a dozen times, maybe 24 times. And I was like, oh my gosh.
I'm so sorry.
It's all good. Took me down to, doing this. So that Titanfall helmet, I actually used that at the event that I took my daughter to. And I couldn't see her, so I kept tripping because the visor was so small. I kept tripping on her. And the thing that bothered me the most about it was actually that I couldn't hear anything because it didn't have very good like that. So I looked into it and I found out, shooting, like real steel shooting ear protection has that like amplifying ambient sounds and then, cutting out loud sounds. And so I can just use that to, actually hear, and then I can actually turn it up louder than I can hear normally.
Yeah, I like
so
that.
Like I can actually hear better with these on, theoretically. This pair isn't as good as the other pair that I used on the first helmet. But, they're more than sufficient for this. And
good ear and eye pro makes a huge difference.
Yeah, it does. And, I do not feel like anyone is going to hurt me when I'm wearing
I can't imagine they would be able to.
No.
If they wanted to.
I really don't think so. And then on this one, this is a recent change. I mean, like last night, I got this mirrored visor.
Yeah.
It's like, I think it's like a sunglasses visor type thing, because I got a perforated sheet and it was 1 millimeter thick. And so the light was catching on every hole. So I actually couldn't see in sunlight. Like I went outside and I'm like, oh, wow, it's so blindingly bright inside that I couldn't see. And that was like with it painted matte and black on the inside and stuff. So I had to do something else. So we've got this mirrored visor instead, which gives me the best clarity I've had of any of them. So it's like, okay, new plan.
It's all learning by trial.
Yeah, it is.
Fire, right?
And the only downside of it is that the trial by fire is I get one shot at making like the bucket, because this one was 3 days and 670 grams. So like if it failed, that roll can't be used to make another one, because I can't guarantee I'll be there to switch it out if I need to or whatever. So, it went really well considering.
Ever gotten a dart shot into your little air vents yet?
No.
Okay. I'll be
Like
first.
these ones?
No, the front, the top ones.
Oh, these ones? Well, these are actually, it's new that these are open to the air. The other one wasn't like that. It was just cosmetic. This is theoretically more venting, although who knows if it actually does
my goal
that.
for the next event you go to.
Yeah, please do. Please mail slot a dart into there. I think my head is below that, so it won't hurt me, and I won't feel it, but I want it to happen.
Okay, we'll make it happen. Yeah. Event Friday, Saturday. You're going to either of those?
I'm going Saturday.
Saturday. All right.
Leighton or Ogden or wherever it is really far.
Yeah, it's like next to Ogden's in Leighton.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we still have some time left, Heath. Something to see, background, history. We talked about your background, things that contributed to your success, satisfaction in life. What you like the most and least about the hobby. We didn't talk about least about the hobby.
I can talk about that if you would like.
I think it'd be great.
That's a hard question, because it's like there's. I think it's kind of like the ego butting heads that happens, where people get so mad about like things, and like that things have to be like the way they see it or whatever. And like, I mean, there's some. I'm not gonna get into any specific names or anything, but I can think of at least like 5 off the top of my head, where it's just like they cause trouble. No.
Okay.
Like some people, drama just follows or whatever, and some people maybe cause drama, and so
On like a hobby-wide level or local level.
I'm thinking mostly in the online communities, because that's where I see it. But like, there's been some local drama here and there, and like. Things happen. I mean, you got a bunch of people running around trying to make something happen.
Right.
People butt heads about that, like people don't always see eye to eye. They see things differently and stuff. So, and I think that like that is probably the thing that like frustrates me the most, is like, guys, we're all here to have fun. Let's, have fun instead of trying to be right all the time. Even if sometimes there are like actual right or wrong answers. That is true sometimes.
Well, even when we're trying to, get to a sense of right, there's a fun way to do it. Perhaps.
Yeah, exactly.
I wonder where that comes from then, where it's like if it's a hobby sense and we're all there to have fun, and why does the ego become part of it?
Yeah, I think sometimes it's like cultural, like locational. Like I think that there's some hot-blooded people in our group, like is it 2018, 2017? We had, it was a long time ago. We had a competitive tournament or whatever, and you've probably heard about it because it was a whole thing, and things didn't go right, and things got really heated, especially at the tournament, the final one. Things got super heated. Right. There was some yelling, there was some fighting, and it kind of fizzled out, I think, mostly, and like resolved itself. But it was really a thing, and I think that like people just get so competitive sometimes, and so like.
Well, the adrenaline's rushing. You mentioned before, like somebody can get hit by a high-powered shot at close range, and it's not that they're not expecting it, or it's not that it really hurts. It just surprises them,
And sometimes it does hurt. Like, I mean, you take a shot to the lip or the ear; those always hurt.
Just like it can be right in the back of the ear, those rubber paintballs ones.
Oh man.
But it's as you see it coming, then you just shrug it off.
Mm-hmm. I had I was like leaning out a door. This was when we were still managing to get churches for the night wars or whatever. I had one. I was leaning out. My glasses were here. My sunglasses. I was using this eye pro because that was a good idea. And I took an FEJ to the side of my eye from down the hall, so it wasn't like it had so much energy, but like that really hurt. And then for like a week, my eye would hurt a little bit when it would like. The pupil would dilate.
No shoot.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, I'm glad there's no permanent eye damage there. That is why we always wear, ideally real eye protection and not like, that's what the helmet's about, right? No one's gonna get me again.
Yeah, that's good. I feel like for me, like, at least I think I'd echo that sentiment as well, where it's just about all the egos, and that creeps up in anything really.
Yeah. So
it's like just going to have fun. I know we all have different views and opinions, especially with certain like laws and restrictions, and I know a lot of people with like
HPA is contentious.
HPA or like anything that's real steel, like all your designs are all like you said, they're
even if they're not like a replica, a lot of them, like the Pigeon is in no way a replica. It's a replica of nothing. Same with the Magpie, but they just like form follows function, and so they just kind of have that real steel silhouette, so like, and that is one of those points that people argue about all the time is like color and like design and shape and stuff, and like, there's not a right answer. There's just what we do to answer that problem or solve that problem for ourselves, I guess.
I like that. That was a well thought out answer right there. We talked about producing, selling, large scale, manufacturing, hobbyists. Wow, we covered a lot of ground. It was a good first podcast for us, man. Is there anything that you feel like that you'd want to say if you had your own podcast? Talking to all the nerfers in the world.
No, I think I said my piece.
Oh, I guess you're talking about what is the most exciting thing in the hobby that you're excited for? We talked about new designs, but is there anything specifically that you feel like really excited about as a hobby, as a large scale? Because we got the Dart Zone releasing new stuff.
That is probably it. Is that like there's now a first, I'm gonna say first party company because we're the third party. I don't know who the second party is, but a first party company like Hasbro or Dart Zone that's finally making things that are fitting the needs of the competitive and modding community. And that's part of the kit culture thing is it's like these aren't really modding blasters, they're just like higher performance. They're more hobbyist or whatever. And competitive grade, I guess is
or like out of the box.
Yeah. Like an out of the box competitive solution to foam flinging, I guess. And I think that's really exciting. The most exciting innovation of all is probably just that you can go to Walmart and buy half darts now, because now you don't have to cut your own darts. You don't have to. I wish they'd sell the bamboo darts. Those are my favorite.
They work really well in the Amazon.
Oh, they're so good. They're the best. I want those in store, and also half dart only. Although the cut down ones are fine. I bought the bulk pack. So that was a huge investment, and like I've gone through. I cut down like 800. I think I had like. I I can't remember the numbers they came with, like 1,400 darts, I think. I cut down like 800, and I still haven't gone through all of those yet. So, like,
You just gotta go to one events.
well, yeah, I guess so. That's all I run. I bring my own darts, and then I just leave them. Because it's like, well, you know, it feeds the dart pool with darts I like, at least, so.
It's a win-win there.
Yeah, exactly.
So you mostly run, I mean, last night you mostly run your
The lever
action, right?
Almost exclusively these days.
That's brass, 17/32, right?
Yeah, so it has, I can't remember if it's like 8 or 9 inches of brass barrel. I got it up to 200, and then for whatever reason now it's down at like 180. But like I just like really like the way it plays. I tried some other things at the last event, and they were fun, but like this is where my heart is. And I was running it with I was testing a lock. So what would happen is that the lever would flop if it was primed, which is bad for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
I mean, like unchambering a dart or a shell, and then like that. So I added a lock here, this detent, and so
It just bends up there.
yep,
Right.
this
Oh,
just
spring,
like
okay.
yep, just like a spring-loaded detent that moves back and forth, and so it holds the lever. Won't come out, but it's easy to.
I would say I like that. I did use
Also,
boots.
the trigger safety. We're very proud of this because we didn't want you to be able to like smash your fingers with this metal lever. So the trigger moves out of the way.
Genius.
So
3 years in the making.
yeah, exactly.
If you want something like high quality, it'll take a while.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
exactly.
iterative though, so
Yeah, it is. And so I was running a printed lever, so I had a 8 kilogram spring.
remember those days.
Well, I mean, like at the last event.
Oh.
With this, I was running a lower spring load, so I didn't break my lever because I was testing it without, like, I was testing the lever itself having the detent set up rather than just the cover, which worked just fine. So I was only hitting like 150, and I felt like as soon as I picked this up, I did so much better. Like, it just like is what I use, so. You know, and then switching around sidearms, you know, sometimes the Pigeon, sometimes the Magpie, usually the Magpie. No, I guess cowboy.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you what out of all the stuff you have in your run at events, what do you like the most? I guess lever action.
The lever action, like hands down, like there's just like no question for me that is like my absolute favorite. It like suits my play style perfectly.
say
Like
that,
like
yeah.
if I'm playing video games, that is still what I go for. Is like that. If,
kind of, or,
well, no, not even that. It's like the relatively like I guess marksman rifle type thing.
Yeah,
where it's
yeah.
like you have relatively quick rate of fire, but it's not as fast as semi, and it's high damage usually. So like in Uncharted 4's multiplayer and The Last of Us both had lever actions that were like that, and The Division had a lever action that when I got that, it was like, oh, I haven't changed guns since then, and it's all I use.
I would say like, I'm very similar, at least in my play style and the video games that I have played. I recently started playing again with one of my roommates. I haven't played video game in 8 years since though, but I do. That's my style as well. Like the
You want to place
high
a good
damage,
shot,
shot,
yeah.
a good shot placement. Star Wars.
Oh, and
Battlefront 2,
like Call of
sniping.
Duty and stuff too. It's like if they have that option where it's like you keep it loaded and you have fewer shots, but they're like, you know, anyway. And then I like full auto as like just a blast, but
fun,
I
yeah.
don't usually have a functional full auto blaster, so I haven't run that in forever because like it just everything's broken or dismantled. So, and I wanted that one to be full auto, but my auto pusher just like
right.
didn't work right. So I moved to the solenoid because it's like you can't beat the reliability of that.
Unless you have room for some boards in there.
Yeah, I sure do. Over the solenoid, there's tons of
I
room.
was gonna say, it looks like you should have room in there. So
I could add some kind of select fire.
your
to
your Mark II
eventually.
was select fire.
Kind of. It was like I modified it to do that, but then the solenoid was one of those cheap Chinese ones that like aren't very reliable, and the pulse generator. What?
Yeah.
And the pulse generator, for whatever reason, I couldn't adjust it, so it just kind of it wouldn't cycle fully on full auto. Like it would short stroke all the time.
Dude, you're really making me want to like look into that too, because I remember my HP and I loved it.
It was so
There's Church
the
Wars, Arena
ergonomics
Wars.
are just so good.
Yeah.
Like there's something about like that, like grip fed, like
I'd want a 3/4
SMG
stock.
carbine. It has another setting for extended.
Well, I want
Oh. Well, I mean, we could just keep adding slots.
slots.
The only thing I'd like is those arms to be metal rather than just like a really thin printed plastic.
Maybe somebody with like a machine shop who could do that.
Yeah, if only.
Geez, yeah. Let me know if you find somebody because that would definitely.
No,
take
that would
my
be
nerves off
that would be a good help. But I found it was pretty solid. So.
Yeah, pretty solid. Yeah, if you're not wrapping up,
If you're
it's
not-
not a Springer, so you're good. On that, flywheelers can be a little bit lighter in their sturdiness.
Yeah, exactly.
Lever action, for example. Yeah. So. Yeah. Man, I had all these other thoughts as we were talking, but now I'm playing with your boys. I lost all my train of thought there. We only have like a couple minutes left, though. I don't know.
I think I
man.
might need to wrap up soon.
You need to wrap up soon. I kind of want to squeeze more. I love talking to you. don't see you very often.
But yeah, I know it's a bummer.
You don't come to too many events, and when
Yeah,
you do, it's usually you're there for a short time. And
Yeah, I usually
Already
have to leave a little early, and then it's hard if you get there on time. You don't do anything,
Yeah.
and you're just loading up. And like if you preload, you're even more ready than everyone else. So, gotta not do that. Gotta be late like everyone.
Well, yeah, the mindset of like come and play and,
And
be
then
on
go,
time and then
or
go.
whatever. Yeah,
Because I mean, you live your life by obviously a schedule per se.
Yeah.
So
of sorts.
yeah,
The child life schedule. So.
yeah. I've got my sisters have babies and they're going through the whole thing. I think it's good though because otherwise you just have chaos. And you live in order, and you with
Yep.
kids, you don't have order. You just have chaos, and that's too much.
Oh yeah, they're agents of chaos, and that's like fun, but it's also like, anyway,
Yeah,
it's a whole
you know.
thing.
Let's see. So, any other projects that you don't have here, like the lever action, you're kind of wrapping up, or you're at a really good place with that. I know you've got your Roaring 7 here.
The only other thing that I've been toying with, I was playing
no pun
around with a dual stage Magpie, which I mean,
remember
we're
that.
gonna get like a 20 FPS boost, so it's probably not worth it. To be honest. And then I was actually, I made a Chris Vector replica, and then I was looking at it, and I discovered all of the dimensions that I thought were to scale were actually undersized. Just
Really?
Wow. Yeah, the length and height were short.
The Marathon thing was fairly large for.
Yeah, it was pretty
for
big.
What you think it was.
And then it turns out it's actually small, which actually makes some sense when I'm holding it. I'm like, well, actually, now that I think about it, it's like
Have you shot
the
a
front.
real one?
No. But looked up a lot of like the measurements and stuff, including the width, which is always the compromise.
Have you shot like a real P90?
No, I have not shot any real
Would
steel.
you like to?
I would sometime, but
I kind of want to take you because I feel like it would be really useful. And a good
yeah, I mean
experience.
probably.
And I didn't
I'd
need to
love
go
that,
again.
but
All right, if you've got $20,
yeah.
let's go.
Yeah, I definitely can front $20 for that.
I think it's 25, something like that.
Whatever. And then, so I was making that more accurate because I just wanted to make one for me because I made one for Tim, because that was a commission for Tim. And so, but then I also wanted to make it narrower. So it's like, well, I have all these brushless parts that I'm never going to do anything with. So I'm like, but now I can't fit the solenoid back here. So I have to fit it down here and then copy like that weird recoil, like angled cam that the Bolt uses in the Chris Vector. So that'll be fun if that works, where the solenoid shoots upwards instead of sideways, and then makes the Bolt go like in a sort of a sea travel. That'll be fun. I don't know if that'll work,
That's
but I
like
want
a
to
really
try it.
cool idea. I'll let you be the mastermind behind that one. That sounds like a interesting.
And then make it full auto because it's a brushless
It's gotta be full
blaster.
auto, yeah.
So like.
Well, I mean, I would really like to get more into brushless too. I mean, especially with like the Chris Vector, and people kind of know that we have some of your designs, the Pigeon and Magpie.
I often direct people. If someone asks me for something, I'm like, ask them because like I can't take on a commission right now.
Yeah, that's the hard part though, is I can't take it on either. I mean, I can put it on my list to then maybe produce one day, but as far as one-offs, which is one thing I was going to ask you about too, is, for example, the lever action you spent 3 years on, the Magpie was also a little more complicated, or the Pigeon took less time, maybe 100 hours or so. But you said you do design on commission. That, at least you used to.
I used to.
So would that still be a couple hundred hours as well? Or?
Yeah, so that vector I definitely undercharged for because it ended up being probably like 250 hours, including like the prototyping time, because like it was a pretty straightforward, like
Box kind of.
flywheel solenoid
Right.
switches, set up and then just fit the parts. But that was, like it's the commissions are hard because like because it's not like what I want to be making. So like
That's
I have
hard.
to be paid a good amount of money to make it worthwhile, and that doesn't
Okay.
always happen. So
Yeah, so I mean, for me, I would really like to get more into brushless, for example. I mean, the FDL, got phased out, and there's a Kestrel and some other options out there. I haven't really looked into it though, but that would be, like you said, slug
next
fire.
thing, kinda.
Yeah,
yeah, and I don't know anything about like programming and stuff, which is why I haven't really.
so here's my pitch to you. You designed the shell. I helped you programming because that's
All
my
right.
forte. The other thing I was going to think about is Pigeon and Magpie. We talk about like the shell ejecting Magpie and the long coal and other variants of that. People keep coming to us for requests. I've gotten some requests like for the Vector and stuff like that. So my pitch again is like, hey, design something you like, and if somebody else likes it, then let's work together and actually get it in more people's hands.
Yeah,
Because that would mean
I'm
that
down.
you could take on a commission then, because then it would be not just a commission, one-off commission. It would then be something that you could then have more than just that one person. Because
Yeah.
I'm willing to bet you, and you probably would agree to and know us already, but there's probably somebody else who wants that commission instead of a one-off.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people want the Vector. Problem is like producing that at a reasonable like margin because it's so big, so much printing, so print intensive. That's
leave the
tough.
margins to me. That's awesome. I mean, as far as margins for you though, that's different as far as your design time.
Yeah.
Like the Magpie, was that a commission design or something? That you
No, that was
did?
just me,
Okay.
and that's why I put hundreds and hundreds of hours. I mean, just the little sears that it has, the little flexible parts. I printed dozens and dozens of like tweaked, like and move it a millimeter here, move it a millimeter there,
I hear that.
until,
It is a lot of work, but you find a project you like and it doesn't feel like work at that point. So.
Yep, exactly, and that's why I have a tendency to avoid taking on things that don't like compel me or whatever. So
It's nice to have that flexibility.
yeah, and I am definitely lucky to be able to have that.
Because your wife works full time.
Yeah, she does, and
Sons of you.
so I draw a comic with her, and then work on Nerf stuff while I'm watching our kids. So
Yeah.
good life.
That's one day.
It's the dream, right?
How old are you?
30.
30. Okay. Geez, in 5 years I'll be you. Something like that. I don't know. Well, yeah, that's about the end of our time. You got to go, family get back to, and
Yeah.
we've got things to do. But thanks for coming and chatting.
I'd love to come again here and chat more
Yeah.
for fun.
Love to have you, and I'm sure by that time we'll have all sorts of new projects as well. And so
Yeah.
we'll be in touch, and see you on Saturday.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah.
All right.
Also, the light went out. Perfect timing. Battery died. Is that what happened?